José Mujica was born on May 20th, 1935, in Montevideo, the capital city of Uruguay, small country in South America. His family was not rich. His parents were small farmers and shopkeepers who struggled with debt and unstable income. When he was still very young, his father died, and the family's financial problems became even worse. Mujica's childhood was marked not by comfort, but by hard work and constant reminders that life can be fragile. He learned early that money could disappear quickly. But character and courage had to be built slowly. As a boy, Mujica loved the countryside. He spent time in fields and on small farms, helping relatives with planting, harvesting, and taking care of animals. The rhythm of nature, sunrise, rain, wind, and soil became part of his inner world. He also saw how unfair life could be for small farmers. Prices changing, powerful landowners controlling markets, and poor families always one bad season away from disaster. These experiences planted the first seeds of anger and idealism in his heart. He began to ask why some people had so much while others had so little, and whether the system could be changed in his youth. Uruguay went through political and economic troubles. The country, once called the Switzerland of South America for its relative stability, fell into crisis. Poverty grew, and inequality became more visible. Many young people became attracted to radical ideas and revolutionary movements. Mujica was one of them. He joined a leftist guerrilla group known as the Tupamaros, which believed that the system was so unfair that only direct action could force change. They robbed banks, attacked symbols of wealth, and tried to redistribute money and goods. Mujica left behind the path of ordinary politics and stepped into the dangerous world of armed resistance. This choice had serious consequences. During the 1960s and 1970s, Uruguay's government responded harshly to guerrilla groups. Mujica was arrested multiple times. He tried to escape, was recaptured, and was eventually locked up as one of the most important prisoners of the regime. For many years, he lived in tiny cells, sometimes underground, with almost no light. He suffered isolation, hunger, and poor health. He spent long periods with no books, no radio, and almost no contact with other people. At times, he came close to mental breakdown. The man who had once dreamed of changing society now sat alone in darkness, unsure if he would ever be free again. But in those long years of prison, something deep happened inside him. Mujica has said that he learned to talk to insects, to plants, and to himself just to stay sane. Cut off from normal life, he was forced to look inward and understand who he really was. Slowly, his anger began to transform into something else, a philosophy about freedom, simplicity, and the meaning of happiness. He realized that material things, which he had once wanted to redistribute by force, were not the final answer. A person could be poor but dignified, and rich but empty. True richness, he began to feel, had more to do with inner peace than with possessions. In the 1980s, Uruguay returned to democracy. The dictatorship fell, and political prisoners, including Mujica, were released. He walked out of prison after more than a decade behind bars, with white hair, health problems, and a long history of struggle. Many people expected him to remain bitter or to return to violent methods. Instead, he made a surprising choice. He decided to leave guerrilla warfare behind and enter peaceful democratic politics. He joined a broad leftist coalition called the Frente Amplio Broad Front and began to speak not as a fighter, but as a politician. At first, Mujica's style seemed strange in the polished world of politics. He spoke in simple language, using stories from farms and village life, not sophisticated economic terms. He wore plain clothes, not expensive suits. He used humor, self-criticism, and honesty in a way that made him stand out. For some elites, he looked like a man out of place, but ordinary people felt that he was one of them. Over time, he was elected as a member of parliament and later as a minister of agriculture. In these roles, he focused on rural development, small farmers, and policies to reduce inequality. In 2009, after many years of involvement in democratic politics, José Mujica ran for president of Uruguay. It was an extraordinary moment. A former guerrilla fighter, a man who had spent years in prison, was now asking citizens to trust him with the highest office in the country. His campaign was not based on expensive marketing or glamorous images. He simply spoke to people about justice, modesty, and common sense. He admitted his past, did not hide his mistakes, and told voters that he wanted to serve, not rule. Many Uruguayans believed him. He won the election and took office in 2010 as the president of Uruguay. As president, Mujica lived in a way that shocked the world, but in a gentle, inspiring way. Instead of moving into the grand presidential palace, he chose to stay in his small farmhouse on the outskirts of Montevideo. He and his wife continued to live with their three-legged dog, drive an old Volkswagen Beetle, and grow flowers. He donated most of his presidential salary to charity and to social programs. The man who was now officially head of state still wore simple clothes, worked in the garden, and sometimes answered his own phone. Journalists started calling him the world's poorest president, but Mujica replied that he was not poor. He had just chosen to live with few possessions, while living simply. Mujica still faced the serious responsibilities of leadership. His government worked on policies to reduce poverty, expand social programs, and protect human rights. Uruguay, under his leadership, legalized same-sex marriage, regulated the cannabis market in a controlled way, and strengthened social welfare systems. These decisions made the small country an international point of interest. Some praised Uruguay as a laboratory of progressive policies. Others criticized some of these moves. Mujica listened to both sides, but always returned to his core values: respect for freedom, social justice, and an honest, modest, personal lifestyle. His speeches as president were different from many other leaders' speeches. He did not read long, dry texts full of technical language. He spoke from the heart, often without notes, mixing stories, jokes, and sharp criticism of consumer culture. At the United Nations, he warned that the world was becoming obsessed with buying more and more things, while forgetting about human happiness and the environment. He said that when people spend their lives working only to consume, they are really spending their time, their one and only life. For him, time, love, and friendship were more important than money and luxury. Mujica's way of living sent a powerful message to people inside and outside Uruguay. He showed that it is possible for a president to live like an ordinary citizen, to drive his own car, to sit on an old chair in a small kitchen, and still be respected on the global stage. For many young people around the world, he became a symbol of authenticity in a time when politics often feels fake. His life suggested that true authority comes not from gold or palaces, but from coherence between what you say and how you live. Of course, his time in office was not perfect. Not all policies worked as planned. Some economic and social problems remained. Critics argued about the long-term effects of his decisions and about whether his personal modesty was enough to solve deeper structural issues. But even his critics often acknowledged his honesty and personal integrity. In a world where many leaders are accused of corruption, greed, or hypocrisy, Mujica stood out as someone whose private life matched his public message. When his term as president ended, Mujica did something consistent with his whole philosophy. He stepped down and returned to ordinary life on his farm. He did not try to change the Constitution to stay in power longer. He did not create a personality cult around himself. He went back to growing flowers, giving talks, and sharing his reflections about life with students, journalists, and visitors. He continued to speak about the dangers of excessive consumerism, the importance of solidarity, and the need to care for the planet and for each other, for your viewers. José Mujica's story of riches is a special kind of story. It is not about going from poor to rich in the traditional sense. In fact, it is almost the opposite. He went from material scarcity to political power, and then chose to live simply. His real riches are his freedom from the need to impress others with things, his ability to sleep peacefully with a clear conscience, and the respect he earned by aligning his lifestyle with his words. He reminds us that success is not automatically found in a bigger house, more expensive car, or a larger bank account. His journey also teaches that people can change and grow. A young man who once believed in armed struggle later became a defender of peaceful democracy. A prisoner alone in a dark cell became a president who encouraged conversation and compromise. The same person who had suffered deeply chose not to take revenge, but to support reconciliation and social progress. This shows that our past does not have to chain us forever. We can learn from it and turn our pain into wisdom. In the end, the richest part of José Mujica's life may be his understanding of what enough means. While many leaders chase more power, more fame, and more luxury, he chose a small house, a simple life, and a big heart. His story fits perfectly with your channel's message that the greatest story of riches is not how much you own, but how much you grow, how much you give, and how true you remain to your values when life finally puts power in your hands.